Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My face is really big on the presentation there. I'll try not to linger on this slide for too long. Um, we'll give a brief amount of time for the rest of the folks to trickle in, but we won't wait forever. Not going to punish the people who are here on time, right? Yes. Yeah. All right, we're a minute past. That's as long as I'm going to wait. So today's topic is 5 Google Ads myths that are killing e-commerce growth in 2026. So Google Ads is an environment that is changing all the time, as you know. I'm sure you're exhausted by it, just like I am, but it's always creating um, differences in knowledge, differences in tactics, and what worked last year might not work this year, so on and so forth. So that's exactly the kind of stuff that we want to tackle today. And oops, hold on here. Just by way of introduction, excuse me, I want to introduce the company that I work for. Smec has been in business for 18 years, and I'm proud I'll be coming up on my 10th anniversary with Smec this year. There's an increasingly large number of us who have been here for 10 years or more, so that's something that we're really proud of. And yeah, we're one of Google's most important partners here in Europe. We've got hundreds of e-commerce clients. We have an e-commerce specialty that's multi-brand retailers, also mono brands, marketplaces, and different business models within e-commerce. And the beating heart of that is our performance marketing experts. I'm going to say one more word about that in a second, but just as an example of some of the clients that we work with, you can see some logos. Here we work with brands and retailers all over Europe, but also throughout the world. I mean, the Miami Heat on there, that's one that I'm just really proud of. Um, I think it's funny. Uh, we're just we're a small company from a small city in a small country, and you know, um, we work with MBA teams from across the Atlantic. Our data, our expertise is featured in places like the Wall Street Journal and the BBC. Something that I'm super proud of. We've also this time next week, if you can carve another hour out of your calendar, I'll be talking with Google's own Ginny Marvin. Um, and we're going to be discussing AI Max, this new technology, the latest product from Google Ads. There's a lot of questions about it, and we're going to clarify some of that. So, I mean, everything that I've just told you right now, I'm so proud of because, as I said, um, you know, none of it's normal. It's not normal that we work with clients all over the world. It's not normal that um, the BBC is printing us. It's not normal that Google, they're what, a $4 trillion company, and that they take their top spokesperson to speak with us about their products. I think this is all not normal and in a really good way. It's something I'm proud of. The only thing that I can say to explain this is that we have a culture of expertise, of excellence. We set very high standards for ourselves, and we've been doing that every day after exhausting day for the past 18 years. So we're definitely a company that I'm proud to work with and that many are proud to partner with. Now, let's get into the agenda for today. I promised you 5 myths, and 5 myths you shall get. You can read them all right here in front of you, but this big hype the last couple of years about heroes and zombies or bleeders and leaders. Maybe you've heard about this. A long-standing tactic, which is to bucket your campaigns by margin cluster. What's going on with the interaction between PMax and shopping? Is ROAS a reliable North Star? And PMax, I've called it a black box many times before, but as I said, things are changing all the time. Is it still a black box? So we're going to look at each one of these and how having kind of the wrong beliefs or the wrong assumptions about the ad platform, the wrong tactics that you derive based on those beliefs can limit your growth or unlock your growth. That's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm also going to show you a couple of glimpses at our software technology, which, we have particular beliefs of our own and worldviews. We have practices that we've tested, and we try to encode these capabilities in software so that you can have the same. So I think you'll see how this all comes together through that. All right, without further ado, by way of introduction, I want to paint a very large picture for a second, and then I want to back it way up. So this is the big picture that I'm talking about. This is my kind of framework for thinking about what's going on with AI and the intersection with e-commerce. It's something that is, I think, on every boardroom's table right now to figure this out. Every owner is wondering about this. Every tactician is wondering about this. It permeates all layers of e-commerce. And the core model that I'm outlining here is that we're shifting from an existing paradigm or model of e-commerce sites getting traffic from Google search organically and through paid means, acquiring new customers this way, getting repeat purchases this way, on a tried and true economic basis that we've known for years, cost per click, cost per acquisition. This is the world that we've been living in e-commerce for the past 15 years and longer. And the world that we are headed to is this kind of yellow line here, and it's much less sure. It's AI shopping assistants, in-chat purchases, new things like ChatGPT announcing that there's going to be a 4% commission on purchases through their chat. So this is this brave new world that we're headed into, and we don't know how long this is going to take, and we don't know how steep the adoption of AI shopping assistants and agentic commerce, all this will be. Depending on how steep and fast it happens, it can look like a brick wall that we all crash into together, or it can be a gentle slope and everything calmly transitions. But we have just crossed over the line. We are right at the tippity top of that curve, about to find out what's happening next. So it's a very exciting time. And that's the long-term picture that I want to paint for you. But until that moment, that moment where things are, where these two lines intersect, and even thereafter, one thing is clear. Nothing is changing to a certain extent, because Google has outlined their core technologies that they're going to use for their ads. It's Performance Max, Demand Gen campaigns, and AI Max. They call this a power pack. And there are and will be ads inside of AI services, next to AI services. This is Google's entire revenue right now. Google is not collecting commissions. Google is not focusing heavily on a subscription strategy for AI like OpenAI does. Google is and will continue to be an advertising revenue model for the foreseeable future. And this is and will continue to be an important part of e-commerce businesses for the foreseeable future. So I want to slightly de-hype the topic of agentic commerce. It's something we need to pay attention to, but we also need to keep our eye on the ball and focus on the things that are happening right in front of us. So with having said all that, let's talk about one of the myths that is affecting us here and now in the present in Google Ads as we know it. Something that I've seen a bit overhyped in recent years, the past 1 to 2 years, I would say, is what you might call the heroes and zombies approach. It looks something like this. Maybe you've seen it before, maybe you haven't. I don't want to totally shit on this model. It's not entirely bad. This is just the latest rebranding of something known as the BCG matrix. It was invented by the Boston Consulting Group decades ago. You might have heard of like dog products or star products and stuff like that. This reimagines these things as zombies or sleepers or bleeders, which are products that cost you a lot of money without producing conversions or never even really have the chance to convert. And then there are, of course, bestsellers that are high volume, high efficiency, and these are hero products. And then there are different combinations thereof. So this model is not exactly bad. The idea of pursuing a model like this is that you can have a relatively simple account structure and you can try to extract more revenue out of the sleeping products and you can try to maximize your best-selling products. And it's a logic that makes perfect sense. The tricky thing is that what happens when we actually apply data to the situation, it almost always looks like this, where a very large share of your products end up in this so-called zombie bucket, where there's low volume and low efficiency. And then a very small minority of your products are going to have that sweet spot of high volume and high efficiency. Now, when you start to apply budget to it, this is the scenario that we see time and again, where those zombie products, it's a very large amount of products, and I think it's great that they get taken out of direct competition with high-performing products, but they'll typically end up in a campaign with a pretty restrictive return on ad spend target because the efficiency is not really there, and a budget that is insufficient to cover that huge amount of products. And this ends up creating basically a self-fulfilling prophecy where zombies are doomed to forever be zombies, and things actually don't change that much with a structure like this. The other problem is that this is purely based on the data that you have on the historical view. So these zombie products or sleepers, it's hard to determine which of those have potential because they don't have a lot of data to base on. I'm going to jump ahead and look at this example here. Here's a sneaker. It has 0 conversions. It only has 3 clicks, a small amount of impressions. What are you supposed to do with a sneaker like this? How do you decide if this sneaker could have potential? How's Google supposed to decide? That's kind of the dilemma here. But with this retroactive view of performance, you won't find a statistically significant answer because this could also have 3 clicks and it could have had 1 conversion and the performance would look a lot better, but it's also statistically insignificant. It's only based on 3 clicks. It's not a real picture of the performance. And that's generally one of the big struggles that we face here. New products will also by default be zombies because they don't have historical data. So it's a cold start problem. So you'll have things all mixed together. There'll be overstock mixed in there. There's going to be new products that might have a lot of potential. There'll be hidden diamonds all mixed in there. And it's a question of like, how are you supposed to set thresholds? Like, how do you define the boxes in this 4-box model? Like, at what point is something no longer inefficient but efficient? At what point is something no longer low volume but high volume? The reality is that a 4-box model, it's just not that clean. There's a huge amount of question marks in there and a huge amount of uncertainty. So while this is a strategy that is fulfilling in its kind of face value logic and it's easy to implement at face value, it's hard to actually get this right. One way that we solve this is something we've been doing for actually years and years now, and that's product neighborhood modeling. So we call this SmartScore AI. And what this does, that shoe there that we're talking about, where there's no data here, we can hardly say anything about it. That shoe as an individual is no longer important. What is important is this whole collection of other shoes and other products over there, because we can learn on this kind of, you could call it like a swarm intelligence of all this other data, looking at all different kinds of attributes, like the colors, the size, the product type level 1, 2, 3, whatever, the price point. We can look at well over 100 different attributes and model what the predicted performance of that sneaker is. And this kind of foregoes this whole problem here of not having any historical data, because we can actually, looking at historical data of other products, we can create a model of what the actual performance of this product will be. And, it's called SmartScore AI, but this is not, this new ChatGPT, blah, blah, or anything like that. This is good old-fashioned machine learning. Like, this is a problem that math can solve, but humans can't quite solve it by ourselves. There's too many data points. It's too nonlinear. But if we apply the right math and machine learning to it, it's a problem that can be tackled. So let's move on to the second myth. This is a tactic that I've been seeing since I started in this business. Some have been in the business longer than I have, but taking margin splits, applying them through a custom label, and creating, a high, mid, low margin campaign, or having much more granular margin buckets. And while I think that everything that you do to connect your margin data and your profit to your campaigns is good, this is just in and of itself doesn't have a place in 2026 anymore. I'm going to show you a couple of examples to make that concrete for you. So again, this is a mapping topic. Like earlier, sorry, I'm jumping back. We saw how this neat framework here about volume and efficiency is totally distorted once you look at the distribution of your products and your conversions and stuff like that in there. There's again a core distribution challenge in something like margin buckets. This is data where you can see the advertiser created margin ranges and intervals of 10%. And you can see how products and conversions are distributed in there. So they don't have, this is not like a very nice smooth bell curve that we're seeing here. They don't have the hugest, most even distribution of products across different margin classes. But even more to the point, their conversion data, a huge amount of their conversion data is all concentrated in a single bucket, the 30 to 40% margin range. So in a case like this, you don't really need or margin in and of itself is insufficient for structuring your campaign or your account, because there's just not enough kind of heterogeneity or enough variance in there. What you could do that could make sense is to have like a bucket for some of these high margin ones and make some more granular margin buckets in the area where there are a lot of products and conversions. But the default logic here of, 10% intervals makes sense. It looks nice to me as a human. It's nice in reporting. It does not make sense in terms of campaign optimization. Here's another example where we see kind of a more bell curve shape, and we see this a rather even distribution here of products and conversions. But what's interesting is that there are actually two different bell curves here. There's a bell curve for products, which is centered around 25 to 30% margin. And there's a bell curve for conversions, which is off center to that. And so these margin buckets, this is exactly the type of thing that I want to address. Like, I have a disproportionately large amount of conversions in some of these margin classes. Can I fix that with my campaign structure? Well, yes and no, because margin is one of those fascinating things. It's very important to your business. It's not important at all to Google Ads or to the campaign or the bidding or anything like that. Like, if we look at the change in the distribution here between these two, there's actually a clear pattern here. So all of the lower margin buckets have a disproportionately high amount of conversions, and all of the higher margin buckets have a disproportionately low amount of conversions. This is an effect of pricing and demand. These lower margin products are converting better because the price is more attractive. And unfortunately, these higher margin products that are attractive for the advertiser don't do as well in the channel. And so these two things are at odds with one another. And that's why you need to consider the intersection not only of margin, but other things. In this case, the invisible hand of pricing. So in our platform, we provide pricing insights to help you understand if you are above, below, or at benchmark with your peers or your competitors, I should say. And here, look at this time series here. You can see it quite clearly. The darker line here is the average price difference. And as that goes down, meaning that your prices are becoming more attractive, you're getting below the average price, the conversions start to go up. So you can see that these things have, not surprisingly, an inverse relationship with one another. But that's exactly the type of thing that you need to consider, the interplay of these things. rather than just having a naive margin approach. So I'm going to return to that in just a second, but I still want to show you one more case of margin buckets done wrong because I really like to drive home my messages. What we know about the smart bidding in PMax, also in shopping and smart bidding in general, is that the more conversions it has, the better. That's why you might hear things about campaign consolidation, account consolidation, the idea that you should try to not split up your account into a million campaigns the way we used to do maybe, but rather keep the data lumped together. And you can see that effect playing out really well here. Basically, in the leftmost bin, we have campaigns that had between 0 and 30 monthly conversions. And it is pretty hit or miss whether the campaign is going to be above the ROAS target or below the target. There's actually a greater than 50% chance that it's going to be below target. And there's a very small amount of campaigns that are on target, which is what you actually want. And then as we continue adding in monthly conversions to these campaigns, this is based on a very large sample of PMax campaigns that I analyzed, we see that this trend rapidly improves. So by the time you're at 60 to 90 monthly conversions, about 75% of the time, the campaign is either on target or above target. So this is a beautiful trend because the amount of times that TROAS doesn't work and is below your ROAS target just diminishes and diminishes as you keep adding adding conversions in. So that is the point of having campaign consolidation, is to keep the data together. Now, back to margin clusters. This is a disaster. This was an example, and I think, you always have to assume good intent. I think the people in question thought they were trying to be sophisticated here. They were also under orders from their chief financial officer. But what they did was they created very granular margin buckets. It was similar to what you see here. It was these little 5% brackets. And they had a campaign per 5% margin bucket, okay? And each campaign had to have its own ROAS goal and its own budget that was assigned to it, of course. Now, the problem is that this had nothing to do with the distribution of their conversions, and it was chopping up their data into a million campaigns. And so what this shows you here are all of their campaigns based on sorted on how many monthly conversions they had. And on the vertical axis, you see the difference to the ROAS target. So most of their campaigns had way less than 25 monthly conversions, and the variance was enormous, anywhere from not hitting from like minus 100% to the ROAS target to being 400% over, which is equally as bad, to be honest. Now, as soon as you start getting campaigns that have more monthly conversions packed into them, that trend improves. It's just like the chart that we just saw. And at a certain point, these campaigns that have greater than 50 monthly conversions, all but one of them is above the ROAS target, and they're all near the ROAS target. So this is exactly the kind of thing, why bother making a million of these granular little campaigns based on super granular margin buckets if it's not even going to come close to hitting the ROAS target? It just doesn't make any sense at all. So there is a way to solve these problems. This is a way of describing another feature within our platform, and we call this dynamic segments. The point of dynamic segments is to have multi-dimensional segmentation. It might sound like a fancy phrase, but let's bring this together. We're talking about how a volume and efficiency matrix alone is insufficient. We're talking about how it doesn't make sense to pursue margin alone without considering price attractivity, without considering things like the distribution of performance. This lets you consider different types of performance data, like your conversion volume, different types of product data from your feed, like the brand, the product type, your custom labels, which could include margin, and your custom data, or rather, I have margin here as well, but the customer lifetime value, your search ad 360 data, the price attractiveness, all this kind of stuff. And this allows you to create segments that are reflecting products in a multi-dimensional way, not just looking at margin alone or price attractiveness alone, but the intersection of those two things. Just as one example, here you can see it borne out in the user interface. It's just as easy as this. There are product filtering options here within our dynamic segment. And so we can look at, this one, this strategy is called margin drivers, SmartScore plus margin. So it's using the SmartScore to overcome the data volume challenges. And then it's including margin data that they've made available. But you can also look at your percentage discount, your effective price, your price attractiveness, and you can have a much rounder strategy. And it doesn't have to be rocket science to do it. Next myth, PMax versus shopping is an either or decision. Now, this was true. I actually had a Google product lead several years back in a private conversation. They told me that the goal of the way PMax and shopping were designed to interact was to force an either or decision. He said, we're not going to get rid of shopping anytime soon, but we want advertisers to make a decision, an either or decision. That's exactly how I phrased it. And the way that this was enforced was by having PMax have a default priority over shopping, so that shopping was always squashed by PMax. But since the 18 months or longer, that's no longer the case. And I want to show you something in data, how we see this playing out across hundreds of advertising accounts. If we look back to 2022, there's a gray line, which is shopping only, and a blue line, which is PMax only. So those were the percentage of accounts that were exclusively running shopping campaigns and the percentage of accounts that were exclusively running PMax. And it was very polarized. It was very either or. Now, due to the smart shopping migration that happened, this rapidly, they switched kind of rank there. So PMax only became the dominant setup at that point. Shopping only became a lot less common. That was the impact of the standard shopping, of the smart shopping to PMax migration back then. But there's also this third line, the little yellow line down there. And this is the percentage of accounts that are running hybrid builds. They're running shopping and PMax next to each other. And this has done nothing but trend up over time, or away from here. I'm going to zoom into it for a second. And now we're seeing a full 25% of advertisers are running shopping and PMax next to each other. We're working with ppcsurvey.com, and their latest data suggests that the number could even be a lot higher than that. To zoom into what happened here a little bit, I've isolated just the yellow line because in the previous chart, it gets flattened a bit by the height of the other data. But here, it's unflattened and we can see it a bit better. So as I said, there's the first phase where we see what was going on during the migration and the early days of PMax rolling out, where this was probably not really intentional. People were testing these campaigns in parallel and stuff like that, but it wasn't really, I would say, intentional. And then it peaked for quite some time and just stayed flat there in the second phase here. Around 15% of advertisers were running both next to each other. I still question how many of them even really knew that they were doing it, how many of them thought they were about it, how many thought of the strategy behind it. But at this period in time, Google was squashing the shopping campaigns through the default priority of PMax. And now in the last year to 18 months, we can see that this percentage started growing steeply again, about as steeply as it was back in the day. So it seems like now people are really making the intentional choice. Yes, I want to run PMax and shopping next to each other. Now, is it a good idea? That's the next question. And the answer to that is kind of no. You have to be careful, that's all. So PMax and shopping don't exactly get along. The thing that will happen is, I have a little flow chart here to explain this. PMax and shopping can come into conflict with one another. The first thing that happens is, are you targeting the same products in both campaign types? If no, that's fine. There's no conflict. If you are targeting the same products in both campaign types, the next question is, are you also targeting the same queries? Now, there is no keyword targeting in shopping or PMax, of course. So by default, the answer would be yes. And that means that you come into a conflict. If no, then you can mitigate this conflict. Now, as I said, there's no keyword targeting. So the way that you differentiate at a query level is, for example, maybe you have brand excluded from PMax, but brand traffic is allowed in shopping. This would create a brand difference between the two, which would help limit that. Or maybe you have really different ROAS targets and budgets, which will force them into different kinds of auctions. That's another thing that will cause them ultimately to target different types of queries, different kinds of users, different kinds of auctions. But by default, if you run the same products in the same PMax and shop in both PMax and shopping campaigns, they'll come into conflict with one another. And to look a bit how that plays out, because I think unfortunately that has very much been the case to date. We see in the left-hand gray column the CPC range of shopping only campaigns. And then the other gray one is we see the CPC range of PMax. Now, for whatever reason, PMax tends to have higher CPCs than shopping, okay? But what's interesting, the left-hand blue column, we find that if shopping, or this is what happens to shopping CPCs when they are in a hybrid scenario with PMax. We see that they start to look more like PMax CPCs. The bids get higher, okay? And the range of bids gets larger. On the bright side, if we look at the right-hand blue column, okay, all the way to the right, that's what happens to PMax CPCs in a hybrid scenario. They get a bit lower, but overall, what this seems to do is make shopping a bit more expensive. And the reason why is that Google doesn't quite agree with me on this, I have to tell you, but what Google has said is that the conflict between PMax and shopping is handled by ad rank. Okay, now I asked Google, all right, how is ad rank determined between PMax and shopping? Because, you know, there's the same products with the same landing pages built from the same feed. The bid is done by Google. The title, what should determine the ad rank besides the bid? And Google said, in fact, it is the bid that determines ad rank when these two campaigns go to head. And so I think that's what's responsible for shopping CPCs escalating in hybrid scenarios. So I think it's very important that you do not target the same products with PMax and shopping. Or if you do, you must have a very good reason why. So here's a rather complicated slide for you. Sorry about that. But this is an example use case. This is how you can combine a scoring model, like I've talked about before, even if that scoring model is heroes and zombies, how you can provide any type of segmentation with a differentiation and strategy using PMax and standard shopping. In this case, as you can see, the goal of PMax is new customer acquisition, and the goal of standard shopping is to focus more on existing customers. So that's a type of logic that you could apply here. That would make a bit of sense. And then you could have the same products, but you're trying to pursue different kinds of users or stuff like that. As you see, it is a bit complicated to build and to report and stuff like that. Here's another one. What if I only want to pursue my top products in PMax campaigns? Reason why I want to drive a lot of users on site with that. I want to do the remarketing that's baked into PMax. Those products can afford the remarketing, etc. And then maybe these other products like your long tail or more sensitive products, you really want to use like detailed bidding or do different kind of tactics that are only available to standard shopping. Here's a way that you can also build that out. These things are fully possible to do. There are just risks in doing this. It can be tricky to, again, avoid conflict, avoid bid escalation, keep everything in the right campaign where you want it, all this kind of stuff. So that's why with our platform, I have to tell you, I'm not the world's biggest fan of hybrid setups. I'm quite agnostic to it. I think there are use cases out there that can make a ton of sense. I think you need to be careful about how you do it. But that's why we developed our product to help you with that, because it's basically one of those situations where you need to enjoy responsibly. And this is what the product should do. It should help make sure, for example, double serving, that if you don't want your products to be competing against each other in different campaigns, you can make sure that each item is always in a segment, which is assigned to a campaign type. You can guarantee that you're not going to have items competing against each other. You can handle the automation of this completely hassle-free just through a comfortable user interface. You can have a holistic budget management between the two campaign types. These are all advantages of doing this through a tool instead of just on your own. So ROAS is your campaign's North Star. I've been complaining about this one for years and years. I wrote something called the ROAS Pathology like 4 or 5 years ago now, I guess. But I still see ROAS fundamentally misunderstood and fundamentally misapplied. And it's truer than ever. And I'm going to show you why in a second. But what I mean by this, we're going to tease out this dilemma. The problem is that in principle, ROAS is a proxy for your profit, or it's your campaign efficiency, right? And it should be kind of a static goal, like this is what I need my ROAS to be. That's the one level of ROAS. And then the other level of ROAS is that you use it to pace your campaigns. You use it to differentiate your campaigns. It's one of your best, most powerful tactical levers. So there's this big kind of tension or discrepancy between, is ROAS a goal that should be static, or is it a lever that I should play around with? And just, to backtrack why ROAS is so popular, I mean, it's so simple. That's why. It's easily understood. It's easy to calculate. You can use it at every level of your campaign or your account. It's reportable, like the reporting compatibility is a dream. You can get it down to the hour all the way up to years. And also Google left the formula open-ended. It is return on ad spend, and the return is undefined. That return usually is revenue, but you could also have it be profit, like your gross profit, or anything that you really want it to be. And so ROAS is an incredibly flexible metric, very simple to work with, and it's also the core of their most popular bidding strategy. So it's not surprising that it's become as dominant as it has. And the thing is that it often gets used as a proxy for profit or break even. Like, this is where I need my campaign to be to scale. Now, the tricky thing is, if you use it as a proxy for profit, the question is like, what is your margin of error in there? Because your actual profit can end up widely differing from whatever your ROAS tells you, due to things that are not known to the campaign automatically, like your fulfillment costs, your return rate, your credit card fees, all this boring administrative stuff that makes or breaks businesses. And the other problem is that as you scale your spend, there's this diminishing returns curve that kicks in. And so if you assume a flat margin of error that's baked into your ROAS, the problem is that that margin of error becomes more important as things start to saturate and flatten out. So especially when you're with high spending campaigns that are nearing their maximum impression share that's realistic for them, it becomes quite critical, actually. And now the other thing that I mentioned is that there was a big change when PMax rolled out, because if we look at classic campaign types, let's think of standard shopping in the top row here. You'd have your campaign and your ad group, and then you could either at like the keyword level or product group, you could set these pretty granular bid strategies and stuff like that. You can make a much more granular bid there. But with Performance Max, It's not about bidding at all. It's about your target ROAS. And this stuff lives at a very high level of aggregation, which is the campaign level, along with your budget. And so where you used to be able to have your kind of campaign level goals and your account level goals, and then you could worry about very tactical things at a deep level, that's not really possible in the same way anymore. So now that target ROAS, as I said, it's supposed to be like a goal that you want to adhere to, but it's also one of the main ways that you can steer your campaign. And just as an example of that, this is data from peak season or November, 1 or 2 years ago. I did this analysis, but I could do it again today and it'll look just the same. This shows you what happens with and without a ROAS, a ROAS target in place. So the white line is without a ROAS target and the yellow line is with a target. And you can see the difference here, that the pacing and the kind of reliability or the volatility is much lower when you have a ROAS target in place, and it's all over the place if you don't. And so you have to think about that. It's pacing the campaign. You can see it right here in front of you. It's pacing the campaign. And if you want to change the pace of the campaign, your budget and your ROAS target are your two most effective ways of doing that. So one thing that we've gone and done because we're completely insane is we just captured massive amounts of changelog data for ROAS changes and budget changes. And we modeled exactly how TROAS responds to different changes of different magnitudes, so that we can understand this. And this is just an example of what that kind of looks like. This is just a screenshot in the real visualizations with our data science team. It's fascinating what you can learn here, but what we built out of that is a way to manage this tension, because we have these AI-powered TROAS and budget recommendations. Because the thing is, you probably do have an account level ROAS goal, and it's never going away, and your boss and your boss's boss is never going to let it go away. And that's fair. That's the reality that we live in. At the same time, it's this hugely important tactical lever. So what we've done here is created a model so that you can use at the campaign level, you can use ROAS as a tactical tool, while at the account level, you can meet the goal you need to meet. This is the global optimum. And this is across campaign types. So if you're using PMax and shopping next to each other, whatever the case might be, that's okay. That's in there. It's managed. So that's something that we've done to help resolve this problem, this tension. Last myth of today, okay? Just looking at the time. Performance Max is a black box technology. Now, again, this myth, it's something that's changed. It used to be true. I said it louder probably than anyone else. I said PMax is not a black box, it's a black hole. I talked about PMaxification of Google Ads and how Google Ads is turning into a black box. But things change. People change. Let them change. So Google has been working really hard, to their credit, to take away reasons to hate PMax. If you are a PMax hater, you do not have a lot of ground left to stand on, if any. Things have changed a lot. It's still, you can complain about it, but I don't think you can hate it the way that many of us used to, okay? Things have just changed. And one of the most important changes there has been in terms of transparency. So, a black box is, there are inputs and outputs, and you don't know what happened in between. But we are getting the insights and the data that we demanded for years. Google is giving them, or has given them to us now, in terms of channels, search terms, placements. This stuff is available now. And I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this because I've given whole webinars about this topic before, but I want to give you 3 free things. Okay. First off, you've probably heard about the channel performance report by now. Initially, this is designed for PMax. I think over time it will also support demand gen and maybe other campaign types, but I've kind of provided my legend here for how to decode what's in that report because it's not even immediately clear where shopping is. It's not immediately clear where your dynamic remarketing is or where your DSA and RSA text ads are, responsive display, etc. It's not entirely clear based on how it's labeled. And one thing that we've built is a script that's free. You can, if you're watching on your desktop and you have your mobile phone in front of you, you can scan the QR code. Otherwise, please visit our website and look for it, or just Google SMec Advanced PMax Channel Report. And what this does, it calculates lots of metrics that are not in there, like your cost per click, your CPM, your ROAS. Actually, I think they've added ROAS, but there's like 10 additional metrics that we've calculated that are not available in the report by itself. And we've also applied common sense labels. So you can see your data represented proportionately and you can understand the performance and you can just know better what you're looking at. Another thing, this is a super nerdy little detail, but very important. Google had search terms built on ad groups, and PMax doesn't have ad groups. So they had to build a new view in order to make search terms for PMax work. They've done it. And we've built on that one too, to the script to the right. This will help you see your branded and non-branded share of PMax traffic over time. So, PMax is like water. It follows the path of least resistance. It's looking for demand. This is what happens when you want to maximize performance. Of course, you follow where the demand is because demand performs well, and Google is a demand capture channel. Now, the downside of that is that an awful lot of branded traffic can end up in your PMax campaign. Maybe you're okay with that. Some people are, that's fine. Other people, they want that brand traffic to belong in the brand campaigns that they can bid separately, that they can budget separately, so that the brand performance is not inflating the non-brand performance, etc. So this is a free script that helps you see if and how much brand traffic is inside of your PMax. They also added recently an interesting new view called the Content Suitability Placement View. Interesting to me. I'm sure it sounds very boring to you, but again, we built something cool for free on it. So this is another script that I designed and that I built together with smec. It's called the Google Ads Placement Scanner. So what we've done here is we've taken that content suitability data. It basically tells us all of the websites where you've been having Google display ads, and that can happen, by the way, in demand gen, PMax, search campaigns if you have display expansion activated, and other campaign types, of course. So then I worked really hard to create a list of the 150, I think, spammiest top-level domains. And we put in a logic here to look for mismatches between if there's a domain and let's say you're based in the US and you're getting ads in Poland, it seems a bit weird, something like that, you're not targeting there. This will help you understand per campaign type which placements are potentially causing problems for you. Risky placements. It's a first line of defense. You might want to add these to your exclusion list. And so those are a couple of free tools, but in our platform, we have a whole lot more. This is the good stuff. So we've built a lot of very cool stuff in there, including channel distribution, powerful search term reporting, the brand, non-brand analysis is in there and is even more powerful, all kinds of stuff, landing page performance. There's great stuff in there that you can only find in our platform and nowhere else. And so I encourage you to check it out. Now, to tie it all together, we've busted a few myths and shown how there are solutions and mitigations to these, things to help you use the latest capabilities. Again, our platform, it's called the Campaign Orchestrator, and it ties together all of these things. You can integrate all kinds of data sources, provide the platform with all kinds of goals, and then you can do things like have SmartScore AI activated to overcome data scarcity challenges and predict performance of new products and products with little performance data. You can create dynamic segments to tackle things in a multidimensional way. So not just looking at margin, but looking at the intersection of margin and price attractiveness or any other combination of factors. And then, of course, we have campaign optimization, which includes budget and ROAS recommendations, as well as PMax and shopping hybrid management. And the final layer on the top of that are advanced insights that you can't get anywhere else, and they work for both Google Ads and Microsoft Ads. So that is the powerful package that we've put together here, which I think will make you better equipped to manage ads in 2026 than any of your competitors, unless they're also using our platform. So that's everything I brought for you today, and now we can move on to Q&A. And if you don't have time, I just encourage you to please join us the same time next week, where I'll be speaking with Ginny Marvin about AI Max. Oops. But going to switch over to chat here. Do we have any insights on how margin optimization works, considering that the margin or the product click can differ from the final margin on the total order? Yeah, so that's a great question. There's a pretty easy solution to this, or to get it set up at least. It's something called conversions with cart data. And this is an extension to your standard tracking, and it doesn't matter if you use Google Tag Manager, or if you have a data layer, if you're using SA360, you can implement this in any case. And what it does is it allows Google to know not only the item that was clicked and the order value, but also all the other items that were in the basket, as well as the quantities. And you can combine this if you use the cost of goods sold attribute in your Google Merchant Center, then Google will also know you can calculate the revenue minus the cost of goods sold, and you have the gross profit. And that will then be reflected for the entire basket. So you'll get the basket profit instead of just the product profit. So I think that's what you're asking. It's a very important topic because, of course, baskets there's upsells, downsells, cross sells, and everything in between. And the question is, well, was it profitable for me or not? Google's also introducing a bidding mode that works exactly in this way. It's in beta right now, but that'll be coming in the future as well. Google is strongly pushing enhanced conversions. Do you think it's necessary to implement? I think that's, necessary. No, I don't think that it's strictly speaking necessary, but it's for sure helpful because, we're in the era of increased privacy settings and thresholds, and this can create a certain amount of signal loss for Google. And of course, can ultimately impact that signal loss can impact the algorithm. So I think, in terms of, is it necessary? We looked earlier about these kind of, I think the sweet spot for PMax, for example, or any smart bidding for shopping as well, is to have 60 plus monthly conversions per campaign. You'll often hear 30 plus. I think it's higher. And if you're struggling to meet these kind of levels of conversion volume, then activating enhanced conversions could give an extra data boost that could lift it up. That would be in terms of necessity. But otherwise, I guess it's nice to have, but if the signal loss continues and we keep going further into modeled conversions and stuff, could become increasingly important. Thanks for those great questions so far. I'll give a minute in case anyone else has any questions. What do you think about the new possibility to remove or exclude audiences in PMax data exclusions? Thanks for that question. I love it. I mean, I haven't used it yet. It's brand new, but the possibility is great. So, there is no audience targeting in PMax. You can provide a remarketing list, for example, but it'll act as a start signal. But this will let you exclude advertising to your remarketing list or your existing customer list or whatever. And that capability is great. Previously Google was offering their own solution here, which was called new customer only bidding. And you could provide these lists, and Google would also do their best to kind of automatically detect if a customer was new or returning. But it seemed to be very hard to make these campaigns work when this is activated, is the most common outcome I've seen. And so I think that this is a nice way to make sure that a campaign is focused more on prospecting, more on new customer acquisition. That's increasingly important to a lot of people. I would say though, dynamic remarketing is not all bad. Depends on how good your offer is and how locked in people are to your brand and stuff like that. But often dynamic remarketing is quite necessary as well. But I like it. I think it's great. You're welcome. Any other questions? We'll give another minute. I've got till the end of the hour, so a few more minutes. I showed a setup where PMax with NCA runs alongside standard shopping to pursue different customer groups. Could we instead run two PMax campaigns using the same feed, one for new customers with NCA enabled and one for returning customers with NCA disabled and a higher TROAS? Would the two settings be different enough to avoid competition? Yeah, that's a great question. And partly related to, there's this new data exclusions that we need to play around with and test out as well. But the thing is, let's imagine you have a campaign that is on either new customer acquisition mode, which boosts the bidding for new customers, or new customer only, which tries to be exclusively for new customers. Okay. So that's your new customer campaign, clear. Then you've got your other one. The problem is that like you cannot make a campaign that is only for existing customers. So it will also be they'll be doing some of the same work. So I think, yeah, you mentioned having a differentiated ROAS target or budget, that it would be definitely necessary to tweak that and try to get it right, because there will be, it's not a perfect segmentation. There's going to be overlap. So that's my only thing. Like what you might want to do, you mentioned a high ROAS. Yeah, exactly. On the one where NCA is disabled, yeah, you need to make the new customer arm be more aggressive so that it's really capturing as much of that as possible to try to starve the existing customer arm of that traffic. It's for sure a strategy worth testing. Got a couple more minutes if there are any more questions. Otherwise, I'll give you back a couple minutes of your time. All right. Well, I think that's going to just about do it. Again, I really hope to see you next week, where I'll be peppering Jenny Marvin with tough questions about AI Max. And I hope we'll get straight answers. I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. Bye.